Hey everyone, I'm Tracy, and this is my partner Joey.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking to you about the history and development of rugby, as well as its commercialization, codification, and we're going to tell you some interesting facts.
So, let's rock and roll.
Rugby football is a style of football named after the rugby school in the United Kingdom. It is said that the game was created in the school's field. There are two forms of rugby, rugby union and rugby league. These two sports use the same sporting equipment and the same size pitch, but have some different rules. Running with the ball became common in the 1830s. Rugby school football became popular throughout the UK in the 1850s and 60s. In 1863, the Football Association formed, formalizing the schism between Football Association and rugby football. The Code of Rugby Union can be traced to three events. In 1845, the first set of rules was written. Before that, rules were often agreed upon shortly before the start of a game. Also, in 1863, the Black Health Club decided to leave the Football Association. And lastly, the Rugby Football Union formation in 1871. Rugby was strictly an amateur code of football, and players were not allowed payment. In 1995, the ban and restrictions on payment was removed, which was a turning point in the professional sport. The current basic rugby rules are as follows. There are 15 players per side, and the goal is to score more points than the opposing team, using tries for 5 points, conversions for 2 points, penalty goals for 3 points, and drop goals for 3 points. The game is played in two 40-minute halves with a 10-minute halftime break. Some rugby terms to know are tackle, ruck, maul, line-out, scrum, offsides, penalties, passing, kicking, conversion, and try. Another term to know is sin bin, which is the penalty box where players must sit for 10 minutes if they have committed a foul extreme enough for a yellow card. This term was introduced in 2000 at the Six Nations Tournament, which is an annual tournament between England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, France, and Italy. Currently, for safety purposes, all players on the field will wear a mouth guard to protect their teeth as well as to lessen the probability of a concussion. It is also recommended for the forward players involved in the scrum to wear protective headgear known as a scrum cap, so their ears are covered. Some instead prefer to wear a headband taped around their head, which covers their ears as well. Swollen, untreated ears leads to a condition known as cauliflower ear, where the ear is permanently swollen and deformed. Women's rugby union is a sport identical to the men's game. No one knows exactly where women's rugby originated, but it is thought that the game started in 1881. During the First World War, women's charity games were organized. Many were played in Cardiff. Back then, all of the women wore protective headgear, whereas nowadays it is a personal preference. In these games, Maria Ely played fullback for Cardiff. She died in 2007, where she became to be known as probably the oldest women's rugby player at the age of 106. In 1990, a 2-week festival known as Rugby Fest took place in Christchurch, New Zealand. It was the first worldwide multi-regional women's rugby tournament ever. Rugby Sevens is a version of rugby union that was created by two Scottish butchers in 1883. The game is played on the same size pitch as rugby union, but only consists of 7 players per side, 3 forwards, 1 scrum half, and 3 backs. Each half is only 7 minutes long with a 1-minute halftime break. Once a team scores a try, the conversion must be attempted within 40 seconds. Because the players are more spread out across the field in this game, scoring happens more frequently, which makes the defender's job a lot harder. Since these games are shorter in duration, tournaments are easy to complete in a day or a weekend. Some of the major international tournaments are the Rugby World Cup Sevens in the IRB Sevens World Series. In 2016, Rugby Sevens will be reintroduced to the Summer Olympic Games. This sport has not been a part of the Olympics since 1924, when it was dropped after a pitch invasion by the French crowd when France lost to the USA 3-17.
The world governing body and chief lawmaker in Rugby Union is the International Rugby Union, abbreviated IRB. The IRB was originally founded in 1886 as the International Rugby Football Board by representatives from Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. England refused to join until 1890. The IRFB changed its name to the IRB in 1998 after relocating its headquarters from London, England to Dublin, Ireland. The IRB currently totals 97 unions in full membership, 20 associate members, and 6 regional associations. The Council manages and controls the affairs of the IRB, overseeing the implementation of its strategic plan twice a year. The Executive Committee ensures and monitors good corporate governance principles of the IRB. There are several tournaments under IRB control, but its principal property is the Rugby World Cup, which is organized every 4 years. It is the sport's most recognized and profitable competition. Each country has its own governing body. For example, England's governing body is the RFU, Rugby Football Union, which was founded in 1871. As you can see, the Rugby World Cup has delivered significant economic benefits to the designated host nation. Depending on the location, the Rugby World Cup alone can induce between 260 million and 1.1 billion pounds of total gross value to the host nation. Only the Olympic Games and the FIFA World Cup deliver higher paying audiences than the Rugby World Cup. Also, it delivers the largest number of international visitors to the host nation during the 44-day period of the tournament. The benefits of being a host nation can be substantial. The International Rugby Board, or IRB, is a non-profit-making organization. All the generated revenue through its activity is placed back into the game of rugby. The Rugby World Cup is the main source of revenue for the funding of rugby development. A striking 95% of all the money distributed by the IRB for rugby development comes from the Rugby World Cup revenues alone. The Rugby World Cup is currently one of the world's top 3 sport competitions. The Rugby Union has experienced constant growth after the sport went fully professional in 1995. Global revenues nearly quadrupled over the following 10 years. Stakeholders face many challenges, and one of them is adapting to the climbing interest rates and participation of the sport. A big issue that is currently affecting the sport of rugby is the international migration of professional players. International labor migration increased dramatically in the 1990s. Athletes migrated from developing and post-communist transition countries to developed West European and North American countries. Migration is in fact a serious concern for many teams. Because rugby is a high-contact sport, players are prone to severe injuries. Injuries are at a steady incline, with teams losing up to 23 players per season. Because of this, mouth guards are required, while scrum caps are highly recommended.
In 1995, the South African Springboks defended the New Zealand All Blacks 15-12 in the World Cup final. This moment has become one of the greatest moments in South Africa's sporting history, and it was a huge turning point in the post-apartheid nation-building process. The movie Invictus was based off of the true story. Another interesting fact is that the first game of every World Cup to date has been started by the same whistle. It is nearly 100 years old now and is held at the New Zealand Rugby Museum.
So, I hope you enjoyed the presentation today.
Cut! Cut!